Okay, what we're going to cover about fundraising: setting a goal, identifying funding sources, building a fundraising plan, creating a case statement, and cultivating donor relationships. So what you need to get started is kind of everything that we talked about so far. You need your mission, vision, and objectives. You need your concept, your core messaging for the festival. If you're an organization or even just a team putting on the festival, you're going to need your organizational structure. People are going to want to know who's behind this and who those people are. You're going to need your budget, which we talked about. You're going to need your marketing materials that we talked about. And then you're also going to need evaluation data, which we're going to talk about after this, about the impact of the festival and data on how many people attend and how it goes. So these are the most important tools that you're going to need, almost all of which we've talked about already, and you're going to have templates for. So you're in a good shape for that. So when you're setting a fundraising goal and determining how much you need, the activities and what you want to accomplish determines the budget. The budget determines the goal, right? You can name a number out of the sky of like what you want to raise, but I don't recommend it. I would start from what you want to do. Build the budget for what you want to do. What are the activities going to cost? What are the venues? What is the equipment? All that stuff in the budget. Get to the dollar amount or the CAM. BAMs? BAMs? I like that. It's like bam. Bam, it's gone. Yeah, that's like, yeah, there's a lot of shopping to do here, so I could see how that happens. So, yeah, you want to know how many BAMs you need to accomplish what you want to do at the festival. And so that's where, again, if you're going to anyone, whether it's, well, I can't speak for the government because I don't know, but if you're going to any private individual philanthropic kind of source or a foundation or an embassy or any kind of donor, the more organized you are and the more information you have about what you need, the more confident they're going to feel about giving you money. I was just sitting in on a meeting with the team after the session yesterday, and they were talking about how important it is for organizational development before a donor actually gives resources to an organization for something. If you can convince people that you're competent and you know what you're going to do, they'll feel so much better about supporting it. So doing your budget, setting your goal, and figuring out how much you need. Once you know how much money you need for the festival, then it's about identifying the funding sources. Where are you going to get that money from? And we talked about the revenue generation piece of it. So maybe you're going to be able to get a part of it from selling tickets, maybe not. But again, be conservative about that number and remember something. The ticket sales, unless you're selling them far in advance, that money is not going to come until the event itself. And you usually have to spend a lot of money before the event. So you need to also be thinking about when the money needs to be spent and when you're going to have it in hand. Okay? And so figuring out where you're going to get it from. So I'm curious, for those of you who have had festivals before, where do you normally get your money from? What are your sources?
Pa, u zavisnosti od koji je festival u pitanju, ali recimo za kulturne dešavanja, to su generalno grad i općina, kanton, Ministarstvo kulture i sporta, federalna Ministarstva kulture i sporta također, fondacije za kinematografiju i tako dalje. Znači, u zavisnosti od niše u kojoj se nalazi, na taj način se u stvari ide prema donatorima. I najbolje je kada se ima prilika da se kombinuje više ovih oblasti u kojima se može, tipa kultura i turizam, ekologija, šta god.
So combining the themes that the festival covers, it makes it possible for you to get money from other places. Yeah, that makes good sense. culture and nature are really good to combine together. I feel like those, so if there are resources for environmental conservation and you're doing a village festival that's presenting cultural heritage, then that definitely opens up more doors. And even remember what we were talking about with environmental impact and sustainability. That's another, you can add that into your festival in a way that's going to attract other donors that are concentrated on environmental conservation and sustainability issues. Okay, anyone else? Funding sources? From what kind of organizations? Yeah?
Mi se uglavnom finansiramo od strane grantova, to su privatne fondacije, ambasade, privatne fondacije uglavnom i ambasade. Imamo i nešto privatnih donatora za neke nepredviđene troškove. Od države i lokalne zajednice nismo nikada dobile novac, mada smo mi i donijele odluku da nećemo tražiti od njih novac, ali smo recimo dobivale određene in-kind donacije od strane lokalne zajednice. Recimo ne bi nam naplaćivali punu cijenu prostora, nego recimo jedan dio prostora i tako dalje, što je uvijek naravno uračunato. Smatra se kao nekim vrstom doprinosa. Da.
Yeah. Great.
Naš festival nema problema sa namicanjem sredstava. Upravo mi smo festival koji ostvaruje dobit i s obzirom da je on ostvarivao dobit koja nije bila kontrolisana, privatan sektor je preuzeo i pokvario osnovni koncept. Naši donatori su vlada, federacije, kanton Tuzla, grad, privatni sektor. Korištenje štanda je na samoj manifestaciji poprilično skupo i s obzirom da festival ostvaruje dobit, onda je izgubio ideju.
Yeah. It became over-commercialized, yeah?
Pa on je komercijalan s obzirom da je veliki broj posjetitelja svake godine i onda on izaziva, s obzirom da je veliki broj posjetitelja, on izaziva i veliki broj sponzora. Mislim, sponzori su i BiH Telekom i naš telekom operater, poljoprivredni proizvođači, mliječne industrije, proizvođači poljoprivrednih proizvoda za osnovnih sirovina, tako da oni svi dolaze i posjećuju i uzimaju prostor na samoj manifestaciji, tako da nemamo problema. Ja mislim da u principu broj posjetitelja izaziva želju sponzora da učestvuju i da budu tu.
Yeah, that makes sense. Once you get to a certain size of festival, the sponsors, we're going to get into that, but basically, like, once you get big enough, then you attract, it's kind of like when you're rich and it's easier to get richer, you know? Like, wealthy people get wealthier. You got to have money to make money. So it's kind of the same. When you get to the point where you have a lot of attendees, it's just like social media, actually. Like, you start to have influence, and that they see that as a customer base, and so the corporations will be more interested in working with you and supporting your event. But it does run the danger that then it becomes an entirely commercial event, and you kind of have to go back to figure out how to reintegrate programming that actually takes it back to its roots. Question?
Prije pojašnjenje, mislim možda sugestija. Ne smatram da je komercijalizacija u ovom slučaju festivala Šljive neki prevelik problem. Mislim da treba možda smanjiti određenu vrstu komercijalizacije. Ne treba sve da bude komercijalizirano, ali da to što je komercijalizirano treba iskoristiti u korist festivala, a ne u korist privatnih poduzeća,
Yeah.
ajmo reći, pretpostavljam da je to slučaj u ovom na festivalu šljive, i da samo onda treba tu komercijalizaciju iskoristiti za festival i za njegove naredne aktivnosti svaku narednu godinu. Znači da treba da bude ta komercijalizacija svrha festivala za festival.
Yeah. Yeah. I can give you another example of something similar in the US that we've had is there's an organization called the American Craft Council, and the organization, its primary focus is on promoting craft in the United States. But their activities, what they were doing is they would organize these craft fairs. And the craft fairs were purely about commercial transactions. It was just, we're going to go there and we're going to shop. And it just became basically a shopping mall for craft. And people loved it, and they could keep doing that. But the problem is it wasn't economics enough, and this is something COVID also revealed, is economics enough. Like when COVID happened, a lot of those businesses completely collapsed because the only way that they had to make money was through those events and fairs. And so one of the things that I was working a lot with the executive director of that organization, and what we were talking about and what I think they did really successfully was actually bringing in more content-based programming. So you still have the fair, but then they brought in visitors. So they made it more of like a festival and made it more about the city. So they do one in Philadelphia, and they have the craft fair in Philadelphia, but then you can buy an extra ticket where you actually go and visit the workshops of the artisans. So they have buses, and they take you, and you go and you learn, and you visit their workshops, and you learn about the process. And then they also did conversations, like our narrative sessions, the podcast kind of thing I told you, where they had a room where they had the fair, where you could go as an audience, and then you listen to people talk about issues in craft. What it's like to be a woman doing woodworking, where they have women woodworkers that are all having a conversation about that, where you then have more substantive programming. So there are ways that you can kind of take something that is really beneficial commercially, but also bring it back to more about the cultural heritage and the people that are really behind the festival and the community. So it doesn't mean that you have to start over. You can take and I like the idea. It's a really commercial event. It has a lot of profit. Use some of those resources to then reinvest. And you can also do things like performances, like, with our film festival, one of the things we do if we have extra money is normally we just show films. But when we have extra resources, we bring in performances too. So we're showing films from all over the world. So one example was that we had a film that was from Bhutan, and we found that there was a dance group. I think they were from New York, but they were Bhutanese immigrants to the United States, and they did traditional Bhutanese dance. And so in the opening of the film festival, we had the film, but we also invited them to do a dance performance to open the festival as part of it. So that's another way of integrating culture different from film, but also bringing in another aspect of cultural heritage. That if you have those resources, those are the types of things you can also do. Okay, so in terms of funding resources, you've really named them all. The government, obviously at different levels, it sounds like you've got a very complicated government structure here that I'm learning about, but obviously at all of those levels, from the national to the, I don't know what, down to the municipal and the canton. Also foundations, private foundations are they're great if you can build those relationships. Some corporate social responsibility, some of you mentioned telecoms. I know that there are, sometimes banks can do that. Usually telecoms and banks are the big sources of corporate social responsibility, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And then private individuals, if people really care about something and they're wealthy, the best thing you can ever do is find a patron that can support your event. So government, we talked about that. I'm not going to get into the in-depth details of that right now. But for foundations, when you're looking for money from foundations and grants, you need to be able to articulate impact usually. You have to look at the foundation's goals, what it is that they're trying to achieve, and how it aligns with yours. So this is that other thing where you might be able to add something to your festival that isn't necessarily a part of it to begin with, and look for ways to partner. So sometimes private foundations are interested, for example, in youth and youth education. And so if you're also interested in youth engagement, is there a way to highlight what you do for youth to make the case for that particular foundation and align yourself with their goals? And I'm going to give you some specific examples, too, of how we did that for the Folklife Festival. And then, really look for possibilities for treat it as a partnership. It's not about asking people for money. It's a partnership. But I want to say that grants from foundations are the best option for you once you've done 3 to 4 years of festivals. If you're a brand new festival, it's a lot harder to get grants. When you have demonstrated impact, it becomes a lot easier. So that can be a challenge when you're first getting started, because a lot of times they want to see experience. Oh, and evaluation matters. You really have to be able to show, reporting back to them, this is the impact that we had with the program. Okay, corporate social responsibility. So corporate social responsibility is incorporated into the business model and strategic plan. For corporations that are trying to do things like this, it could be adhering to legal, ethical, and environmental standards for a lot of organizations. Energy companies also do a lot of corporate social responsibility. But they're also looking for visibility. They want to have, especially, there's so much funding from places like Chevron or other oil companies that it's very controversial of whether or not you take that money, but where they're trying to support community, state, regional, national, and international causes. Yeah, and I want to reemphasize that. It's the same with grants. Like, they really want to be able to see, as your festival grows, it's when you can demonstrate that you have a consistent, large audience, it's when those corporates get interested. So it's very hard for festivals in the first few years, I'm not going to lie. Like, a lot of it is very, like, if you can do the ticket sales, it's a lot easier than the fundraising part. Because people do want to see that demonstrated impact and audience. So it can be challenging, but that's where you go to, you have better luck, I think, with donors like embassies and places like that might be a little bit more flexible for a first time. And local businesses, yeah. So with corporate sponsorship, though, what we were talking about is like what's in it for them. What they're usually looking for is the halo effect. If you're doing something good or reaching a lot of people, they want to benefit from that, and they want that association. So if your festival is doing something that's related to environmental conservation, and they want to improve their image around environmental conservation, sometimes they'll want to partner with you on that. So you kind of have to be careful and make sure that you share values. I think it comes back to that concept of sharing values with where you take money from as well. But sometimes I'm always having this debate of whether or not, for some companies, the money's going to go out there anyways, so you might as well get it and do good with it. It depends, But they usually want exposure to your audiences, and they're looking to increase their markets and their brand awareness. That's why they're doing it. So don't be fooled by other ideas like that's what's in it for corporations. It comes down to the bottom line, and they're looking at working with you so that they can have more exposure to your audiences. So you really then have to ask yourself, like, what's in it for me, and are they the right partner? Okay, so for individual funding resources, we talked about ticket sales. You can also do crowdfunding. Do you have that ability here? Yeah, great. Okay, crowdfunding can be a really awesome way to raise money, because it's also a great way to do a campaign and raise awareness. So that's an excellent way to fundraise for festivals, and I'm glad to hear you have platforms, because in a lot of places that's not allowed, so that's great. You can also do direct mail. Email's usually better. You can even call people. That's, again, you're looking for individuals who, for us, I mentioned volunteers. When we've had volunteers that have come to the festival year over year and they have that experience, as they get older and they get jobs, a lot of them become donors for us. Even in a small amount, they then want to support the festival. So don't ever underestimate like people who start working with you and then can eventually like have, you know, even if it's not their own money, having somebody who volunteers that then gets a job in a corporation and has some influence to be able to provide resources for the festival, those relationships really matter. You can also do membership, where you can, if you have a festival that's related to a particular cause, you can charge membership and people can kind of become a part of a group. And so, again, I don't know what the rules are on that for nonprofits, but can you have members? Okay, so that's useful. And associations usually can do that too. So you can have people, you know, join and get some benefits from being a part of it. And then major gifts are those ones that where you get really lucky with an individual philanthropic donor who really loves what you're doing and wants to support it. They're great. So if you can score one of those, again, it's all about relationships. Okay, building a fundraising plan. So you need to go from reactive to proactive, looking for the opportunities rather than waiting for them to come to you, and creating a roadmap. How much money do you need? When do you need the money? Divide it out so you know exactly, work with your budget and your cycle to know when you need the money, and figuring out where it's going to come from and then how you're going to do it. And the fundraising plan helps to get everyone on the same page. If there's more than one of you, it's important for you all to be really sharing the plan and understanding what the steps are. So what goes into a fundraising plan? You want goals, strategies, tactics, and a timeline. They can just be a simple spreadsheet. Don't overthink it. You just want to put in who you're going to ask, who's doing the asking, how much you're going to ask for, and then track a status of your actions. There's a template that's in your toolkit that you can use for this, and as well as examples. I have one filled out from when I did fundraising for the Folklife Festival. A one-time fundraising event, that could be like a dinner that supports the cause or something. You could even do it as a part of the festival. We often do like a gala dinner to kick off our festival, where we invite donors and we charge a lot of money for them to come, and they get a special performance. Those can be great for raising money, especially if you have people that are going to be a part of the festival, and you can do like a private kind of VIP experience for them. You can do smaller campaigns like online, like crowdfunding that I mentioned, grant writing, of course, looking for government-funded opportunities, regular individual giving, and periodic appeals. So that we mentioned about the email newsletter, that's where you can reach out to people and ask for their support. You want it to clearly state your mission, vision, and objectives. It should have a presentation of the programs that you're going to be doing at the festival, really talking about that concept. And then it should articulate the impact that you're going to have on the different audiences. What impact is it going to have for the visitors? What impact is it going to have for the exhibitors or the participants, the people that are a part of it? And then you have a presentation of your funding needs. What are the resources that you actually need? And then you should demonstrate past accomplishments and successes. So if you haven't done a festival before, then let's say you're an individual and you've never done a festival. What you're going to want to do is sell them on yourself and your own capabilities to do something similar. If you're an organization that's trying to do a festival or an event and you haven't done it before, then you're going to show them demonstrated impact on other projects. If you can show them you've successfully done other things, they're going to be more willing to support you. You want your contact information, and then you're going to want to put recognition levels for giving. People are going to want to know how do they get recognized if they contribute to your event or your festival. So, a couple tips. I think it's extremely important to have both a print and a digital version, and we'll get into why that is. Always focus on impact. I think quotes are very powerful. If you can include quotes from your participants or from somebody in the community saying something about the benefit, those kind of direct stories from people are very important. Design also matters. I would strongly recommend working with a designer to make a case statement and lay it out. Or if you have a great volunteer who has some graphic design skills, that's an excellent project to give to a volunteer. You want to make sure you incorporate your branding, and evoke feeling. You should get people to really want to support this with high quality, colorful images. This is the case statement we used for the Armenia program, which I'm going to talk in more detail. But we have a quote from a woman here in a village that I'm going to read to you. It says, "We would all gather around the tonir, talking, sharing, being aware of each other's problems, helping. We were connected with each other." So this is a quote from one of the participants of the festival, but the reason we put it here is because it's connecting that individual who's going to participate in the festival with the donor. So she's talking about sitting around the hearth in the oven where they make bread, talking, sharing, being aware of each other's problems, helping. We were connected with each other. So the quote is used as a way to invite the person that you're asking for resources to also connect and to be a part of the solution. So that's kind of the tactic of like why we used that. We also included, we have an incredibly dynamic stone carver who was part of the festival program. And we had a beautiful image of him working on a cross stone, which is a very identifiable cultural object in Armenia. So we put that on the front. And we have the name of, this is part of the way our branding works, right? So it has the information here, where you can make a gift online, so it's easy for people, our website, and then it has the name of the festival program and our organization. And then we included some visuals here. And again, this was when we were first starting the program. We ended up with a lot of other visuals later, but we just had 3 photos. One of the landscape, of the weaving, and of the food. Remember, we were talking about feasting and craft were the 2 themes for the festival. So then it goes into some text. And the text that's inside, it talks about the Folklife Festival generally. And then it gets into our concept. What does home mean to you? And then it talks about here, with 75 to 100 participants from Armenia and many more from its diasporas, creating home will showcase the warmth, generosity, and cultural vitality of the Armenian people. So that's our concept. That's it. It's 1 sentence. And that's a very, like a nice opening statement to say this is exactly what we're going to do. And then further describe it. Through demonstrations and workshops, discussions, and performances, visitors will learn about the role Cultural Heritage Enterprise plays in creating a sense of home. From the physical production of food and craft for everyday life to the memories and emotions these traditions convey, the program will challenge visitors to explore their own notions of home while experiencing Armenian culture. So it summarizes exactly what we wanted to accomplish with the festival. And what we do here is the call to action. Be a part of the story. So this one says, the program is produced in partnership with, we talk about our partners who we're working with. So if you have partners already, this is where you're inviting someone else to join you, right? So who else is part of your team? So it's the Smithsonian, the Department of Contemporary Anthropological Studies at the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography, USAID, the U.S. Embassy in Armenia, and the Embassy of Armenia to the United States. So we knew that they were our partner, and what's important here is the Embassy of Armenia and the U.S. Embassy, they didn't give us any money, but they're prestigious, and they were partners for us. So we mentioned them here to let people know we have the government, we have scholarship, we have embassies. Like, we're serious, and we're the Smithsonian, which also helps, but we have these serious relationships, right? We're seeking additional support and contributions to enable maximum participation of Armenian artisans, cooks, musicians, performers, and others to create an engaging and innovative exhibition space on the National Mall. Your sponsorship will help share Armenia's culture with the public, honor the tradition bearers featured at the festival, and tell the remarkable story of enduring cultural vitality. So we have general provisions here of what people get in terms of recognition and contact information. So this is the insert I was telling you about that goes inside. So we did sponsorship benefits. Again, it's branded. And then we have different levels of sponsorship. If you give $5,000, here's what you get. 25,000, 100, 250, 500,000 plus. And then we've talked about the impact. So here are the opportunities for impact. Retail for Armenian products, a boost in tourism from the US market, new business relationships and PR. So we were thinking about who we were going to ask and what they might want to see from potential impact. A unique placement for products and brands. Okay? So this single document I had in digital and print, and with my fundraising plan where I had done research on contacts and who we were going to reach out to, I had an email version of this and also a print version prepared for meetings. And that's it. That was all I needed. You have everything here. It has all the information in it. Then you're taking it with you to meet with people. So, cultivating relationships. I'm going to come back to the Armenia case, but this is extremely important. And you're going to hear it's going to sound like a broken record very quickly. So, when you're working with the government, you want to build trust. You want to try to establish one-on-one relationships wherever you can. You want to check in periodically and share the successes that you're having. Always be responsive. Be quick to respond to messages. Stay up to date on government programs so you know what's coming and what opportunities there are to apply for. Make sure you're completing your reporting requirements on time. That's what the team's working on back there. And ensure that the recognition that the government is going to receive is satisfactory. For foundations, once again, it's about people. You want somebody who works at that foundation to trust you and to respect what you're doing. So build those relationships, one-on-one relationships. Again, periodic check-ins. Don't harass people. Don't reach out to them too often, but just check in with them, maybe like once a quarter or twice a year. Share some successes. If you've done something else or there's some other visibility related to the work, share it with them. Always be responsive. Remember that you're always reporting for impact, so thinking about what the foundation's goals are and what you're achieving and how you can share in those accomplishments. And always monitor for new grant funding opportunities that might be coming out. And think about how it might apply to your work. Corporate social responsibility, again, it's about relationships, one-on-one. They need to trust you. Find somebody that works there. Get to know them, build a relationship. Check in periodically, be responsive, report on impact, you're hearing the same thing. Always be aware of their goals and help them to achieve their goals. What is it that they want to do? If they want to reach audiences, figure out how to help them reach their audiences, reach your audiences. So other tips. When you're starting fundraising, start with an introductory meeting, and wherever possible, try to get somebody to introduce you. It's a lot easier if somebody knows, if you're getting a connection from somebody rather than cold calling. So if you want to get connected to somebody at a private foundation, start asking everyone in your network if they know anyone at that private foundation, even if it's not the person you want to talk to get an entry point. You want to keep it brief. You should do an elevator pitch on phone or email. Hi, this is Hallie. So-and-so gave me your contact information. I'm setting up a festival that I think you'd be really interested in. Talk about the impact and what's the concept. That's it. Is it possible to have a coffee? Meet and talk to them. The first conversations you have should always be providing the background. Who are you? Why are you doing this? What is your organization? What are the needs in the community? Ask questions. Don't just be the one talking. So learn about the foundation. Learn about the person. What do they care about? What is their organization trying to accomplish? Never, ever, ever ask for money the first time you meet with somebody. Always just have it as an informational learning experience. You're sharing about yours, they're sharing about, and make sure you're asking them questions about their organization. So gather information and then take that back and figure out a strategy. It's only after a lot of back and forth that you get to the point where you start to talk about money. I mean, for me, and giving you the examples, it probably took me at least 4 or 5 phone calls and meetings for every single possible person to even start talking about money and to secure it. And then a lot of back and forth after that. So just expect that you're going to have a lot of communication, and just make sure that you follow up and schedule a second conversation. So one other thing, you might go to a meeting and you have a conversation about something. And let's say you're talking about your festival, you're talking about different events, and then you realize that you share something in common. Because when you're talking about cultural heritage, you also get to know people. So let's say that it's about the film festival, and you're talking to someone and you're telling them about your film festival, and then they share with you something about a film. Write back to them, make sure that if you discuss something in the meeting, follow up and send links. Oh, this is that video, this is that trailer I wanted you to see that I thought you might be interested because you like horror films. Follow up, even if it's not specifically related to your festival. I can't tell you how many people don't follow up. People are amazed when you actually do something you say you're going to do. It's so common for people to have a meeting, say they're going to do something, and then never do anything. So the biggest step you can take is to actually follow up on what you say. If you say you're going to share information or links, write, thank them for the meeting, and share the information with them. This is what I just described. Building trust. Always do what you say you're going to do. Always follow up. Be responsive. Be somebody dependable that they can know that they're going to hear back from. And be proactive, but please don't be overeager. There's a balance. So, it's important to be proactive, but you don't want to be annoying. Don't constantly be in their face knocking on their door. It's a balancing act. So once somebody gives, whether it's an individual, a foundation, a corporation, ask them who else might be interested. Because again, you're trying to build a community here. It's about building partnerships in a community for doing something positive. So if they give to you, say, who else, do you know anyone else that you think would be interested in supporting this? And then take contacts from them. Close the loop, always. Make sure you're sharing any reports that you have, any outcomes that you achieve, even if they don't ask for it. Share images, share video, give that information back and be gracious. And as I mentioned, you're not just raising money for the festival, you're building a community of support around it. So with Armenia, I had the impossible task of raising $1.2 million in 6 months, starting from zero. Because I knew a lot about Armenia, the country, but there isn't any money in Armenia, the country. I was able to get about $100,000 from their government, but that was it. And I realized right away that no one else was going to give me any money unless the government chipped in. So I got a meeting through contacts in Armenia with the Prime Minister's office. I gave them the case statement that we talked about. He scheduled a meeting. We talked about how important it was for visibility for Armenia. I asked him what he thought might be possible, and eventually we were able to secure $100,000. So once I had that, I hired a short-term consultant to assist me with contacts within the Armenian American diaspora. And so she had worked in the nonprofit sector, and she just is like a social butterfly, and she knew a lot of people. And so I gave her a small contract, and she introduced me to a ton of people. And so then it was about hitting the road. We built a contact list and a fundraising plan. So we went through and we looked at, okay, here's the Armenian American businesses, Armenian American organizations and foundations, and individuals, high net worth individuals. And so we made that list, and then systematically we're like, who's in Boston, who's in LA, who's in Chicago, and we went and met with them one-on-one. So I had the government's economic growth seed funding, right? They were focused on visibility of Armenia for investment in business. So I was able to get that money by convincing them of that. Then you have these private foundations who had a goal for social impact. So what I looked at is each of these organizations, I looked at their mission, and I tried to figure out how the festival could help them accomplish their mission. Why is it aligned? And I brought that into a very personalized aspect of that into each conversation. With corporations and the private sector, and I'll give you an example of that, it was looking at their branding and their audience and trying to figure out what the match is for it. And then with individuals, it was very grassroots. So it was, again, people who have $1,000 here, $5,000 there. It was about spending time with them in their homes, asking them, what does it mean to you to be an Armenian? And what would it mean for you to see this event, to see your culture represented in this way on such an iconic landscape, like on the National Mall? So some of the funding came from really unexpected places. One of them was a donor who has an organization called Hike Armenia, which is all about hiking trails and the environment. And so, but it's backed by a philanthropist. And so what I was able to do is the philanthropist was interested in the idea, but she really wanted to raise visibility for Hike Armenia, because basically what Hike Armenia is doing is trail maintenance and guides. And so it's a nonprofit, but it's basically trying to develop adventure tourism in Armenia. And so when we had a conversation about that, I looked at what tools I had available to me. So we have a blog, like an online magazine for folk life. And so what I said was, okay, we're gonna do an article on our magazine about your one of your hiking trails that goes from places of cultural significance. So we'll do like a photo story, and we'll talk about Hike Armenia from a cultural heritage perspective. And then they gave us $50,000, and so I gave them a stage backdrop. So we took a photo of the landscape from one of their hikes. We put our logo on the backdrop, and then we put their logo on the backdrop. So then for every musical performance that we had that day, the announcer would say, "Good afternoon, today we have Mikhail Voskanyan and friends performing thanks to the gracious donation from Hike Armenia." Hike Armenia, and then describing it to the audience. So each time there were hundreds of people, and the announcer was also repeating it and letting them know what it is. And then you have the brand on the stage. So that's one organization. Another one, the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative, is an organization that recognizes people around the world who are trying to stop atrocities against humanity. It was started by a group of Armenian diaspora who they were fighting for recognition for the Armenian genocide. And so it's very focused on humanitarian efforts. And so they're very focused and care a lot about genocide recognition as well. So I was able to convince them to give us $50,000 to influence content of our program. And so those narrative sessions that I showed you, that we do the conversations on the stage, we did a whole series of programming that brought people together to talk about conflict and survival and resilience and what it has to do with cultural heritage. So we did like a mini program called Cultures of Survival. It included a film screening and then included all of these conversations. So we had Syrian Armenian refugees who were talking about how they drew on their culture of food in order to create a new life for themselves after they were displaced by the conflict, for example. So again, then Aurora Humanitarian Initiative, each time we had those conversations, was thanked. And by the way, the founder of that is the Nubar Afeyan, who founded Moderna. Yeah, who happens to be an Armenian. So he has a biotech, but this is his philanthropic initiative. Armenia Tree Project is another one. There's a wealthy Armenian behind it. It's a nonprofit in Armenia that's focused on reforestation. And the email introduction was like, "Dear Carolyn, so-and-so gave me your name. I'm aware of all of the great work you've been doing with Armenia Tree Project. We're going to be doing this huge festival. We would really love you to be a part of it. I've attached our case statement about the program to share a little bit more information. Could we schedule a phone call or a meeting? I'd be happy to come and see you and talk to you more about the program." So then I get a meeting with Carolyn. So then I meet with Carolyn and I bring this with me. And this is just something I made in PowerPoint. where I looked at what are the options. I kind of knew like how much she's extremely wealthy, and I was like, okay, maybe we can like get a lot of money out of this. They only ended up giving us $50,000, but I looked at like what are some of the options. And I came up with, because it's the tree project, and our festival wasn't focused on environmental conservation, but when you go to Armenia, around the churches, there are these trees that they have like basically the remaining pagan practices where people tie pieces of fabric onto the branches of trees, and it's like a prayer. And they call it a wishing tree. And so, and it also kind of is like the symbol of tree of life is like very common in Armenian cultural heritage. And so what I came up with is in the middle of our festival site, we used all recycled materials to create a tree where different participants from the festival who were doing crochet and knit, they like knit bombed the tree. Have you ever seen that? Where you like crochet or knit around a pole or something, and then they tied fabric on it. And so Armenia Tree Project, that became their tree, and we had a sign next to it that talked about their reforestation programs, but they also had an actual physical space that was a tree on the National Mall. So the way I presented that, first of all, I was looking at branding options. So I was trying to sell them branding on a stage so they could see like what the stages look like, where the signage is, where you could see recognition. And then for the tree, I just used Google to come up with some ideas of like, okay, well these are the trees, and what we're thinking is we'll make something. And she loved this idea. And so we got $50,000 and we built that tree, and then it gave us what we needed for the festival. Oh, I mentioned the opening reception. That's another great opportunity. You can use it as a fundraising dinner. They also became sponsors of the opening reception, and we had it at a very iconic place, our new African American History and Culture Museum, and which is like very hard to get a ticket at the time. It had just opened, and it was very difficult to get in because it was so busy, but we had the reception there, and so we allowed them to sponsor and get that recognition as well. One of the other things I did through all of this is it's part of a community, and so I used relationship kind of, I'm not sure what the word is, but like competitiveness. And so what I told them is I was like, oh, you know that Armenia Tree Project gave us $50,000. Don't you want to see Hike Armenia represented at the same level? So I used their kind of like, they're competitive with each other of wanting that kind of visibility, and I used that to leverage and to say like, to get more money out of people. It's really fun. I love doing this stuff. So that was foundations. So then I went to a couple of corporations as well, several. But two examples that I'll give you. One of them is Tufayan Bakeries. They make pita and lavash bread, and it's an Armenian American family. And they were celebrating their 50th anniversary of being in business. And I found that out. I contacted them, and I was like, what better way to celebrate your anniversary than to sponsor the Tonier, like the lavash baking oven? And so what we did is, again, it's a business, but it's based on generations of cultural heritage and knowledge transfer from one family to the next, or from one generation to the next. So we did an article in our magazine about that family and the bread making tradition, and we showed their historic family photos and told their story. And then on the sign, we recognized them outside where Anna, the video I showed you, where she was making the bread. And they gave us $25,000 for that. And then they used it for their own press. They put it out there that like Tufayan was a partner with the Smithsonian, and we did this together. And at a slightly small, again, these are high numbers because of how expensive our festival is, and I was lucky enough to be working in a community that has a lot of money. So, but you can take these examples on a smaller scale too. The other group is Tufankyan Hospitality. So this is interesting. It's a guy who has a rug business, a carpet business in the US, and in Armenia he has hotels. So he has an interest in both selling his carpets and also sending people to Armenia. So he gave us $10,000, and what we did is we created a space where his carpet weavers actually came to the festival and demonstrated carpet weaving as participants. So that almost became like an in-kind kind of contribution because we wanted carpet weavers there anyways, but because this business was willing to support it, again, it wasn't commercial. We didn't sell his carpets at the festival. All we did is we had these 2 young women who were weavers, and every day they worked there, and then we had the name of the company there. So it wasn't a commercial transaction, it was about cultural exchange. But for him, it was important because it was recognition of this cultural practice at the Smithsonian. So it was like a really nice way to recognize the work.